had a meeting with the CEO. His name was Eitan, and I remember that at that meeting he was telling me, look, I know that you are young and smart. I also know that you might not be responsible and you might leave after a month because it may be too hard. So I'm telling you, make a decision. But if you leave, I will go to my room, to my safe. I will take a gun and I will just shoot you. So just decide now. Yeah, it was super spontaneous. Didn't expect, but here we are, and I'm really here to, just give whatever I can maybe give. And if there will be one thing that you could take out of this evening, that will be great for me. So I'm really encouraging you to participate. I don't have any kind of guidelines or lectures or any things that I really want to like a structure, but it's just, let's see what comes and let's see what happens, and really inviting you guys to participate and even share like stuff that you just like. If something pops up in your head, it means that it needs to be here in the space, so don't wait till there is some moment of silence so you can ask a question or just interrupt me, like even if I'm in it and I'm talking and speaking, interrupt, hey man, and it's great because it means that this point that you were about to say was the point that we needed, right? So that's really an invitation. I feel like just sharing with you a little bit about kind of my story, and along it some stuff that I've learned and figured out and still learning, and in general really seeing like three main things that I would kind of weave in. One is what a state of consciousness is, and states of consciousness in general, and then how they affect a culture, and then how cultures affect structures. So maybe just a few words about that, these three, before we kind of dive in. States of consciousness, it's basically, we perceive it, we have what we call reality. And this reality, when it is in the individual, there is a specific state of consciousness, which is the brain waves and the neurotransmitters in the body, and that creates the way that we perceive our lives. And states of consciousness, when they are a collective, then people call it reality. That's how we see reality. And when somebody takes a mushroom or goes on a trip or drinks a lot, they get into a different state of consciousness, and then they're tripping. But what if we're all tripping all the time, actually? And we can change the states of consciousness of our culture. And that will affect it. That will affect the culture, because once, just think about it, like when there is 100 people or 1,000 people with a specific state of consciousness of fear, that will create a culture that is based on fear. And you can see it in organizations a lot, because in organizations new cultures form and new cultures dissolve sometimes in a matter of years. And a state of consciousness that can be projected from the CEO of the company or from the founder is something that then creates that culture. And then the culture is what creates the structures. Structures are, like schools or healthcare or politics or the financial systems. And this is created out of the culture. So there's three kind of ingredients that have a connection between them. And sometimes we as individuals or as people, or when we are in politics, we want to change the structures, right? We want to change the way the healthcare or education or the way things are. But if we're not actually diving in deeper into the culture and into the state of consciousness, it's very hard. So that's like just in a glimpse what it is. And now I'm just gonna share with you a little bit about myself. I was born in Israel. Has anybody been there? You were in Israel? You guys? No.
No, I don't.
It's a small country, very special country in the Middle East, surrounded by Arab countries, and many threats. And I was born there, and when I was 5, in the kindergarten, my parents were told that I was super hyperactive then. Back then, I was like, I couldn't sit for a moment. Even when I was eating, I would go around the table and eat there, and I was already all the time wanted to be outside. I couldn't be inside a space, and my parents were told that if I will go to school, I will need to take loads of Ritalin, and they were really not into it. So we moved to the north of Israel, and I went to an open school that's called Meitar. It was on a mountain inside a forest, and there were no classrooms there, no teachers, no schedule. I would come there at like 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll meditate for 30 minutes, and then everybody does whatever they want. And I didn't study how to read or how to write or math. I was climbing on trees and picking up mushrooms. And the idea there was that the emphasis was on what comes naturally from the child. So if my truth at that morning was not to sit in a classroom, then I wouldn't sit in a classroom. And if nothing comes from me, I have no inspiration, and I would just sit and do nothing. And there was actually, they were honoring the boredom. Like, yeah, be bored. It's okay, just sit down and do nothing, and that's fine. And I was sometimes doing that. I was just sitting down and doing nothing. But then inspiration came, and I was like, oh wow, I wanna play something, or I wanna climb on a tree. And different inspirations came. And I remember actually one day, I was maybe 7, and I just had an idea to build houses of mud. And I had like this inspiration of big houses of mud, with like where I can be inside and even light fires inside. And I couldn't do it by myself, so I went to one of the mentors that were there. His name was Michael. And I told him, look, I have this fucking good idea. I didn't say fucking then, but I said, I have this good idea, and it's like house of mud, and just imagine, and we do it like this, and we do it there. And he got super excited about it. And, yeah, let's do it. And we just got a few friends of mine, and we were like 8 people, and for an entire week, all that we did was building houses of mud. And in the end of the week, there were like big houses of mud, just the way I saw it. And I was like, wow, it's like this image that I have in my mind can actually manifest in matter, in mud. And I remember that moment really was really, it showed me something that later on in my life, I could have kind of get there again and understand this again. And during that time, one thing that was always there was money. Both of my parents were artists. They didn't make any money. We were always dependent on my grandpa, and and sometimes when I wanted things, like toys or stuff, they could never buy it for me. And there was only one time in the year when I could have a new toy, a present, and it was in my birthday. And the maximum amount was $70, 150 shekels, and that was it. And there was one when I was 8. There was one day that I really wanted to have. It's called Mega Blocks. It's like, you know what it is?
Yeah. Like Lego, big Lego?
Yeah, it's kind of Legos with dragons and castles, and all of my friends had it, and I wanted it too, and I told to my parents, and they were like, well, it costs 600 shekels, but what we can do is that every birthday we'll give you the money, And then in 4 years, you could have the mega block.
4 years later.
And I remember I was 8 then, and I was like 4 years. You know, when you're 8, 4 years is like half of your life. and it's kind of all of what you remember, so it's like a lifetime, basically.
And I have to wait another lifetime for me.
Exactly. and I was like, no way, I'm gonna get it. And we lived in an artist's village. And every weekend there would be people coming into the village, and just visitors, tourists going around the galleries and seeing the houses there, architecture. And one day I just had a hit. I saw these people, they were walking in the sun, and I was like, oh, what if I sell lemonade? And then I was just kind of found a really good spot where there was sun, no shade, everybody had to come through.
Nice.
And no other competitors. So I set it up.
It's free real estate.
Yeah, exactly. And I set it up, and it turned out to be a very lucrative initiative. And I just made much more money than my parents at that time. So I could buy the mega blocks, and I could start supporting them financially, because they just needed cash, and I had like loads of cash suddenly when I was 8, and they needed it. So I just started to lend them money. And this was another event, just like building this house of mud, that just showed me that these ideas and this inspiration that I have can actually manifest. And at that time, my drive, especially in the next years, when I was 12 and when I was 14, my parents divorced when I was 12, and then I was really ready to support my mom more and more. And I was in a cycle, or in a spiral, that I call the spiral of the survival. And what that spiral is, it's basically starting from a threat, and that's already coming to a state of consciousness. It's a state of consciousness that starts from a threat, and after the threat there is an action that we make. We get into a place of temporarily safe, and then we go again to that place of threat, and it's like a spiral, because we're never actually safe. If we're good, we can spiral up until we get to a point when we're safe. If we're not good, we're dead. And that's the way that we lived for years, right? For thousands of years, that's how we lived. In nature, there were threats. We could be eaten, we could be killed, the weather, starving, and we needed to move through that spiral. And some people, especially in Western countries, I guess in New Zealand for sure, are not even experiencing that spiral. We don't know what it is to have a threat, but almost everyone has some idea of what it feels, because threats are not just threats of money or threats of food, but also when we're at school and we don't really, when we're alone there and we feel like we don't belong, and we're feeling threatened by the system or by the teachers or we are bullied. So almost everyone, I believe, has some imprint of how it feels to live in such a spiral and in such a cycle. And at these years I was really in kind of that. I was at school, and when I was 12 I left that open school and I started to go to a regular one. And then I remember I was sitting in the classroom, and the teacher was writing on the board, and I was like looking, and it looked like drawings or something.
That's really distracting. How come you did that? How come you went to a regular school instead of the open school?
How or why?
Why did you leave the open school?
Yeah, good question. So there was one time that I really liked Greek mythology.
Yeah.
I loved it,
Cool.
And my mom knew some, so she was telling me stories. But at some point, she didn't have any new stories. anymore, and I wanted more. And there was a book, and I couldn't read that book.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, okay, I want to read that book. And then I told to my parents, hey, I want to learn how to read and write. I think I am ready to go to a regular school.
Wow.
And they were like, sure, if that's your truth now, then let's follow that. And they were really listening and waiting for my initiative and not pushing and telling me now you have to read or write.
Wow.
So it really came from that place. It's fine. It's okay there? Yeah? It's good then. And I remember that day, the first day, I tried to write down, I couldn't. I remember the sounds of the pencils of the other kids writing down, and I was I cannot even start. I tried to draw, but I didn't know how. And I remember that day I went back to my mom and I said, I don't know how. I don't know how to start. And then in the beginning, what I did was just listening to what the teacher was saying, memorizing that, or not just word by word, but understanding what she was saying and then telling it to my mom. She would write. And then we would go over the letters and I would understand. Hebrew. Yeah. And I would gradually understand more and more how to read and how to write. It took me a long time. Even now I don't write so fast. But it took me some time to actually being able to write and read. I read before I wrote, I think. And then in the coming years after, I was at school and I didn't really feel belong. Also because of that, I was feeling inferior. I didn't know what they knew. I felt judged. And a few years after, we moved to Tel Aviv and to a different school. And I started, at that time I was already pretty good at school. And there was one day, we lived, me and my mother and my younger brother in Tel Aviv. And I remember one day, it was dinner time. And my mom invited me and my brother to have dinner. And she told us, look, we have no money. My grandpa stopped supporting us. And we need to find another place to live. We just cannot afford the rent. And remember at that time, in the beginning I was a bit anxious. I was like, wow, I didn't want to move. We were moving so many houses, maybe 9 houses or 10 houses. And I didn't want to move anymore. And then I just took a few breaths and at some time I just had an idea that I would just work. And if I could make money when I was 8, and since then I was also doing some gigs and taking dogs and walking dogs and stuff. So I was like, okay, maybe I can just work. And it was, back then I remember a very kind of analytical decision of, okay, I better invest a few hours a day in working and making some money and then giving it to my mom, and then we could stay and live at the same place instead of moving. So I was looking for a job. I was 17 then. And there was one day I went to buy ice cream. There was a really good place that I loved. And I went there, and there was a really cute girl there at the ice cream store. And we kind of started talking, and I was like flirting a bit.
How old were you?
17.
Oh, yeah. No.
Flirting a bit, and then I was asking her out on a date, and we had a date. Wasn't so successful. But I told her that I'm looking for a job, and she said, oh, well, maybe you can work in the ice cream store. The name was Vanilla. And I was like, sure, I love ice cream. And then I remember that since I was a child, it was one of my dreams, actually, to work in an ice cream store. Just because whenever I would go to eat ice cream, especially when it was with my dad, I would want to taste all of the flavors. And my dad wouldn't allow it because he felt embarrassed. It was like after 2 or 3 flavors, and then no more. And for me, I was like, all of them. So it was an opportunity for me to, for the first time in my life, actually taste all of them one after one. in the checklist, in my bucket list. And then I started working there, and I remember I had a job interview. The manager, his name was Roy, and he told me one thing that I really took with me and remembered. It was that we're not a bank or a pharmacy, but we're an ice cream store, and we want to make people happy. So you want to smile and you want to laugh and you want to be happy for that. And I remember that this was something that I really took with me since the beginning. I started by making maybe $10 an hour, which was pretty good for me back then, because by working a few shifts a week I could actually support, and it would have been enough. And I was pretty bad at serving ice cream. I didn't think it was possible back then before to actually not be good at serving ice cream. It seemed like quite a simple task, but I was just not so good at it. And it took me a few months of just practicing. And there was one time that I was almost leaving this job, and I remember that Roy went to me and said, "Look, if you're not into it, just leave. But if you are, I really believe that you can be amazing. So just be dedicated to it, and I trust that it will work." And that's what I did. And I remember that I was starting to practice, and I became better and better at it. And then I had an inspiration to be a shift manager. And at that time it was because the other shift managers told me always what to do, and I didn't like it. So I wanted to be the one who tells what to do. So I told Roy, "Hey, I want to be a shift manager." And I was younger than most of the shift managers, who were maybe 20, 22, 25, more. And he said, "Well, it's possible, but you need to be perfect. You need to be the best in serving ice cream. You need to do the exact accurate weight of the ice cream, and it needs to be amazingly beautiful, and everything needs to be clean." And I remember that at that time I was so dedicated to it, and I'm fucking gonna be perfect. And for days I remember that when there were not customers, I would just be there and just practice again and again and again and again and again. I would just practice and until I could be exactly the weight and exactly the most beautiful figure. And then after a few months I became a shift manager and was working there for some time, and was really guided and mentored by Roy, the manager that I had back then. And a few months after, actually more than a few months, it was a year, something around a year, I just was about to finish school, and there were maybe 6 months in between from finishing school to start serving in the army. In Israel, everybody has to serve in the army. And I remember that at that time it was not Roy already, it was another manager. Her name was Marina, and she wasn't so good, and the company wasn't so satisfied with her. She wanted to leave, and I was very dedicated at that time. I remember that one day I got a phone call from Roy. He was back then he was the operation manager of the whole company, and he said, "Look, I know it would sound weird, but we look for another manager, and I just felt you, and I feel like you can do a great job." I was like, "What? But all the managers are like 30 or 40 or 50 and I'm 18. How can I do that?" And he was like, "Yeah, I know that it sounds weird, but if you believe in yourself, we could have a meeting with the CEO, and I would try to convince him. I cannot promise anything, but let's try." And I remember that I was like, fuck. There was a part of me that didn't want to do that, actually. I just started dating with a girlfriend, and it was just a few months before starting the army. And my ideas were just chilling, you know, have a few months, working a bit, just enjoying the time. But then I just actually realized that there was no other option. I had to do it. So I said yes, and I had a meeting with the CEO. His name was Eitan, and I remember that at that meeting, he was like, he was telling me, look, I know that you are young and smart and everything, but I also know that you might not be responsible and you might leave after a month because it may be too hard. So I'm telling you, make a decision. If you think that if you leave, I will go to my room, to my safe. I will take a gun and I will just shoot you. So just decide now, like now. And I was sitting there and well.
How does that work if you had to go to the army though? Like if you had to go to the army in 6 months?
Yeah, so he knew it.
Okay.
Like, okay, for 6 months.
Yeah.
A little bit less than 6. But I said, okay, I'm taking this. I said, okay. So I started, and I remember suddenly I was 18 and having like 20 employees that I had to manage. Most of them were much older than me, and I had an office, and suddenly I had a nice salary that I didn't think I would make, maybe for sure not when I was 18, and responsibility. But what happened then was that people started to leave. It's like whenever there's a thing in businesses that when a manager leaves, sometimes many other employees take this kind of open window to also jump. So that's what happened, and suddenly I found myself with half of the employees that I had, and I just needed to work day and night. So I started working at 5 a.m. and I was finishing at 1 or 2 a.m. And I was sleeping for 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes. I would hardly see my girlfriend. And she was like, we just started. You were coming at 1 a.m. and then you wake up 3 hours after and you go. But she was coming to the store, so she could saw me a little bit. And then, but I was so dedicated, and I knew that there were a few months, and I remember that back then, it was a bit like a game for me, you know. I just got this cool opportunity. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm for sure I'm gonna stay here and make the best. But I started coming up with ideas, maybe make this reform and this change, and starting to think what I can do better and what I could change and how to make it better. And I started reading a lot of books, and I was reading what in the shifts because I was there. So when there were no customers, I was just reading books about business because suddenly I needed to understand finance. There were it was a few million dollars annual revenues that I needed to take care of and to understand the finance. So I started to learn it and understand how to manage people and how to do marketing for that business. And I remember that maybe because I didn't know so much back then I wasn't so kind of structured. I was very creative. So I just played around and did changes. And maybe something around, a few months after, just before I was finishing the job, I remember that I had a meeting with Eitan and Roy and the accountant of the company, and we had to go over the P&L, the reports, and I was sitting there. And in the food business, there are two metrics or two ratios that are very important. One of them is the labor cost, which is in every kind of business, and the other is the food cost. And there is a specific percentage that's considered good, and you want to be in that kind of spectrum, or that range.
The ratio between the two?
No, it's like when it comes to labor cost, you want to be at around between 20, 6 to 32% of the total revenue, and food cost it's about 30 to 40. In that specific kind of business, in restaurants, it's different. Anyways, I was sitting there, I remember, and they started going over it. I remember that the accountant said, "There's a mistake. Something is wrong here." And my balls were like, fuck. I was already having that picture of the gun. And then they calculated again and again, and they took the data and starting to make sure. And at some point, he said to the CEO and Roy, the operation manager, "Well, it's not wrong. That these are the numbers." And they were like, "How?" Yeah. And it happened to be the best metrics in the history of that business that ever happened. Yeah. And they were in shock and wanted, write a book and share it with all of the other branches. There were about 20 in all of Israel, and tell us how you did it and how you lowered the labor cost so much and the food cost so much, and the revenue suddenly increased comparing to the months in the year before, the same months. And then I really got this kind of like passion for business. I was like excited. Wow, it works! Like I was running up ideas, and suddenly like people actually made like a few $100s more. It's pretty cool. And at that time, I started the army, and I was sure that I wouldn't come back to working there. It was a very intense course of 6 months. And after the army, I was serving in Tel Aviv, just where I lived before. And I really wanted to rent a place with my partner. We really had this dream of renting a place together and living together, but we had no money. And in the army, you get something around $300 or $400 a month. That's the salary, so you cannot really do much with that. So I went back to Vanilla, the company, and to the CEO, Roy, and told him like, "Look, I need money, and of course I cannot manage a branch because I work from 8 to 6, but maybe you have any idea?" And in the beginning they said, "Not really," but then they were like, "You know what? The branches around here are in a really bad state, so maybe just, you have a bike, right?" And I said, "Yeah." Take your bike and just go around the branches and write reports. Be like an ice cream inspector. I was like, cool, whatever, I would do that. And that's what I started to do. And I was writing reports, and at some point I was just getting pissed off that I write the same reports again and again and things don't change. So I started arranging meetings with the managers in the branches and show them, this is how you can change, and let's make a plan so we could do better. And then it actually worked, and the branches started to do better. And a few months after, the area manager of Tel Aviv was just leaving that job after a few years, and they were telling me, "Look, actually you are doing his job anyway." so we don't know how you can manage to have enough time to do it, but you do it, so just take the job if you want and start managing the area of Tel Aviv. And I was like, great. 2 months after, my partner broke up with me. It was too much.
So how old were you?
I was at that time, I was just 19, almost 20 at that time. Yeah.
How old are you now?
I'm 23.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. And my partner just broke up with me 2 months after, because I would work from morning till night and would be just so much in work and job, and I was very passionate about it as well, so we kind of understand that my passion is there. And she was very free. She was Australian, she lived in Israel, Then she went back to Australia. And at that time, I was just working there, and I was working in the army, and I was moving from that cycle of survival to a cycle of the achiever. That's a different cycle. If the first paradigm that we have lived in is a paradigm of surviving and needing to be safe, then it becomes the paradigm of success and the achiever. And I was pretty safe there at that point. I was already making enough money. I could support my parents. But then I was suddenly, oh wow, I can succeed more. I'm climbing that ladder. And I had that belief that that's what I need in life. That's what it is about. That life is about being successful in the world and achieving stuff. And I was so motivated to becoming more and more successful. And I was setting up goals and was really devoted into achieving them. And and at that time, working both in Vanilla and in the army, I was in the army leading the research in the intelligence of macroeconomics, the global macroeconomics. So it also gave me some more understanding into the business. So they kind of helped each other as well. And then I got more and more success, and suddenly was having more branches to manage, and was mentoring the managers of the branches, and was developing them and creating plans, and the plan succeeded. And at some point, the CEO told me, "Look, you did great job in the branches that you had to look after, and they're doing great. And I want all of the company to look like that. So maybe you can be the head of strategy." And it was a big company, about 400 employees, maybe something around 50 or 60 million dollars in revenue. It was a B2C and a B2B sector for client you know what it is, consumers and for businesses. And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I started doing that job and was really getting creative with different ideas and was implementing them in the company and changing the marketing and creating new products and starting to use my my skills from the army of data analysis and using data in the company, and it was very successful. And one thing that I was really focused on back then was actually the culture of the company. And this is a cool thing for you to know because it was really useful for me. I call it the wow effect. And whenever you, let's say that you are working somewhere and you're being paid something, you're not being paid for your time, right? You're being paid for the value that you can create within that time. And there is in that spectrum, there is in between like a standard of what the expectation is. I'm paying you $4,000 or $5,000. That's the value that I'm expecting to get from you in the work that you do. And if you do a little bit more, let's say that you're staying a bit more hours, that you are doing a bit more, then great. Once I can promote someone, it may be you. And if you are doing less, a little bit less hours, and leaving early, coming up late, then once I need to fire someone, it might be you. If I'm doing a really shitty job, really there, I'm not showing up and I'm really making crises and bad stuff, then I would do whatever I can to fire you. And if I cannot, I cannot, but once I can, you are going to be the one who will be fired. And I can also do a wow job. And a wow job is not 20% better or 30% better, but it's like 400% better. Is that employee that you pay them $5,000 and they get you a new big client that pays you $200,000. It's that wow thing that you can do. That thing that makes people be amazed and be like, wow. And this was my focus when it came to the experience, because what I realized is that people didn't really come to eat ice cream. They came to have an experience. And I was focusing on that experience as I was asking myself, what can I do to make it a wow experience for people? And creating videos, and he was sharing them with all of the employees in the different branches of different tips and tricks and ways that they can do to make a wow experience to every customer. And that's what I did. So it was the best marketing, because people started to post on Facebook about their experiences with the ice cream company, and then more people would come, and we would be in the newspapers, and was really focusing on that, and that was very successful. And I remember that there was one day that I got a phone call from Forbes magazine, and they told me, "Hey, we want to let you know that we chose you to be one of the 30th most influential people in Israel." I was like, "Oh wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool." Didn't expect that. And then I started to be like in these communities of these top successful people in Israel, and I started to go to dine with the billionaires of Israel, and started to know more and more people, and people would write to me on Facebook and different ways for questions and for advices, and I was kind of not in a conscious way creating an identity that I was thinking that would make me happy. Someone who is smart and wise and successful, and I was recognized and so on. And this identity also gave me a lot of confidence, because suddenly I was someone and people knew it, and it would be like with women as well. Girls would know it. It would make it easier for me to approach and to make connections, and I was kind of being drawn in that identity, and having that cycle of success, wanting to be more successful and more successful, and having these dreams, and I was saying, wow, I can get so much and achieve so much. But at some point I just realized that I'm empty, and that whatever other trophy or success that I got, I was like, okay, but I'm still empty, and it didn't really give me much. And then I understood that actually I don't want to be successful. I want to be happy. And this is the next cycle. We talked about the cycle of the survivor, the cycle of this achiever that wants to be successful. Then there comes the cycle of happiness, the paradigm of happiness. It's still the achiever, but I want to achieve happiness. And in all of these three cycles, one of the things that defines them is that they are reactive cycles. I'm reacting to something external that happens in life. So in the cycle of success or happiness, it starts from a state of absence. Something is missing. You know that feeling? Yeah? That something is missing inside, and I don't know what to do. And from that something is missing, there starts to be a craving for something that I believe that will give me what I want. So I crave something external, and that creates the reaction. I react to the absence with something that I see, and I do things accordingly that I believe that will work. And I do them, and I either get what I want or I don't get what I want. If I get it, there is a good sensation, right? We did it in Vipassana. If I don't, there is maybe not a good sensation, but eventually there is a normalization process that happens, and I go back to absence. And the fuel is hope. As long as I have hope, I can still go on that cycle. When I'm young, and I'm 20 or 22 or whatever, and I have a hope that I would go to college, and then I will have a job, and then I will find a partner, and then we'll have a family, and I'll have kids, and I'll get promoted, and I'll have a bigger house and a better car, and go on vacations and so on. And I have this hope that this, and then I live always in the future, because whatever I get, let's say I got now a car, then I feel a good sensation, it's normalized, absence again, but I still have hope that maybe the next thing would actually make me happy. So I always live in the future. It's always after the holidays, after school, after the next promotion, then I will be happy, then it will be good. But it's actually never like that. And the hope decreases, and that's why it's a spiral, because I'm starting at that point of zero, and as long as I have hope, I can still move, but the hope decreases and decreases and decreases, and until it depletes to a place of hopelessness. And this place of hopelessness, which can happen either when I'm on a mountaintop, I have everything I wanted, I'm the most successful blah 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 in my country, and I'm supposed to be happy because what I thought would make me happy, whether it's friends. At that time I had friends and I had a partner and I had money, and I really had anything I wanted, and the hope still decreased. And because when I have everything and I'm still not fulfilled, then I become hopeless. And the other way is when I have nothing. It's when nothing works out. I try and I fail and I try and I fail and I lose all my money, I lose my partner, I lose everything. I'm in that place, I'm in my house, really like wanting to disappear. And at that point, these are points of soul emergence, of awakening, of understanding that maybe all these cycles were illusionary. And this is what happened to me back then when I was 21, and I thought I was supposed to be happy and successful and everything, but it wasn't that. So I was like, what then? So what? And then I had an idea that what I need is freedom. And freedom for me back then was to be able to make a lot of money in very short amount of time, and wherever I am. So I could travel the world, make a lot of money, not work much, be free, right? That was the way I saw freedom. So I was trying to create that reality, and it worked out. I became a consultant, and I was consulting to different businesses, and I was making a lot of money. And in a few hours of work a week, I could support myself and my mom and my dad. But then I was still okay, so I would continue, but there was still this absence. And at that point I asked myself, let's say that I'm 40, and at that point I just started a company with two friends back then, and was about to raise money. And I said to myself, let's say that I'm 40, and let's say that this company is super successful, and we sold it for millions of dollars, and I'm rich, and I have a family, and I have a partner, and I have whatever I need. What would I do? And what came to me is that I would just leave everything behind and go into the unknown. And then I was like, then why not now? And this was the moment that I realized that I'm going to leave everything behind. And in a matter of a few months, I arranged everything, and I just took a bag, one-way ticket. I didn't know where I'm going. I had no idea, but I just went and left Israel, left everything. Left my clients. Some clients told me maybe we can continue doing the work on Zoom, but I was like, no. And I cannot have any responsibilities. I just need to be in that emptiness and see what emerges from that, and explore what lies deeper than success and what lies deeper than happiness. What's there? What am I living for? What am I here for? And then the journey started, and something that really ignited that was a sentence that I heard from a teacher of mine, someone that taught me a lot. His name is Bruce, and he said, freedom is not for the self, freedom is from the self. And I was like, what does it mean? what I tried to, and then I realized that what I tried to get was freedom for the self. It was more money, more less time, being able to be anywhere. But I realized that wherever I am, whenever I am, it will still be there, that absence. And freedom from the self is that true freedom. And then I started to ask myself, what is the self? What is it? And realizing that, and asking him, and realizing more and more that that self, that thing that I thought that it was me, my thoughts and my feelings and the identity that I created, and the values and my name, all of that was just something illusionary that I created, and I was worshiping it, and I was working for it, and I was trying to get things for it to make it satisfied, trying to get money, trying to get women, trying to get stuff to make it satisfied. But it was not real, so it could never be satisfied. And that journey started with actually understanding what that true freedom is, and just going and being no one, and no one without any plans. And some stuff that happened that I really, one thing I shared with some of you was when I was in London and I just didn't know, I was about to fly to Portugal, and I was late to the flight in a few minutes, and I realized that it was great that I was late because I was not supposed to be in Portugal, and I already rented the car and everything, but I just canceled it. And then I was sitting there in the airport, and I opened Google Maps and was like, okay, where do I want to go? I can basically fly anywhere in the world right now, and I'm in the airport in London. I can be anywhere in a matter of 20 or 30 hours. And I was just browsing and looking and searching, and then there were a few islands, the Faroe Islands, that I went there. And I just booked a flight, and in a few hours I was there. And every day just revealed itself again and again and again. And I was really no one. I was not the successful guy, and I was not the wise guy, and I was not the consultant, and I was no one. I was just going around and knowing nobody, and more humbleness came in suddenly, and seeing more and more the small beautiful things in life, of just taking a ride with someone and getting to know them, and wow, a new connection, and so many small moments like that. And a few months after, I rented an island in Finland for a month, a desert island. So I was just there without anybody. I didn't talk to anyone, I didn't see anyone, there was no electricity, no reception. I was pumping water, and I got some food with me. That was it. And that was the time when I really had that experience of true freedom, because suddenly there was no one to impress, no one to show who I am, no one to judge me. I was just there with nature, and suddenly my mind that I was so proud of, my mind that could strategize and plan and make money, that suddenly it was not so important. It was actually if I can chop wood and pump water was more important than if I can think of clever ideas for startups. And that was what I did there at that month. At some point I started to fast, so I stopped eating for a week, and I was not reading and not writing and not eating and not making any sound, and was just sitting there by the sea. And when I was tired, I went to sleep, and when I woke up, I woke up, and time dissolved and everything dissolved, and I was not that self anymore. There was no, I was thinking and thinking, and at some point, even the thinking, I was just tired of thinking. No, it was useless. What should I think about? And then I just stopped thinking. And I was just sitting there, watching the sea, 1 hour, 2 hours, 6 hours, night, morning. I was just sitting. And from that place of freedom, I started to feel a different sense of bliss that I've never felt before. I started to realize that actually I don't really need anything from the outside world to be fulfilled and rested. And this part in myself that was so um, was so not rested and so agitated suddenly was just rested. It was just, I just took a deep breath and wow, it was, I don't have anywhere to go to and I don't need to go to nowhere. And this sense of freedom stayed with me there for a few weeks there. And then I was like, okay, so actually I can easily survive with just a little bit of food. And I don't need more than that. I can just sit and be happy. So why do I need to go to all this pressure and tense and people and work and job and what for? It doesn't make any sense. And that point of freedom is a very exciting point because we can choose, and that's what happens to like monks or people who choose to retreat from life. Because once I don't really need anything from the external world, I can easily just be, and I can be in a monastery or in a cave, and it's more peaceful and easier and less challenging than actually participating in life. And sometimes it can call to people to do that. And there was a part of me then that was like, oh, well, maybe that's what I should do. I'll just find a cave. We just stay there. And that's more simple. But that point of true freedom is actually an opportunity. And it's an opportunity to start actually being fully alive. Because until, and a metaphor for this is that you think that you are you're dreaming, you have a dream, you're sleeping, you have a dream. And if you are believing that the dream is real, and most of us when we dream, we believe the dream is real, right? Then we'll be pretty cautious, right? We'll like think twice before we do something. We don't want to die, we don't want to do something wrong. But what if we are in that dream and we realize that it's a dream? Then we can start playing. And that moment of freedom that allows us to start playing life is the moment that takes us from the cycle, from the spiral of the achiever to the spiral of the artist. That moment when we get that. And we all had these moments in our lives. These moments when we were not thinking, we were not planning, we were not dreaming about anything, we were not thinking about expecting things for the future or thinking about the past. There was nothing like this. We were just present in the moment and just experiencing. And sometimes, and it's not always the big, extraordinary moment when we do a bungee jump or when we whatever. It could be tiny moments when we are with someone that we love or when we're playing with a dog or with kids and we're just in nature and we're just present and that's it. And we are free. And there is a sweet taste of freedom. You know Rumi, the Sufi philosopher and poet? There is a sentence that I love about him. He says, one taste and you're ruined forever. And that one taste is one taste of that freedom. Once we taste this full, real freedom, we cannot go back. We realize that we cannot really go back there and go back to that box or that prison that we are at. We're inside. And at that point of freedom, it's like it allows us to be both the actors in a movie and also the directors. And just think of, let's say that you're watching a movie, and in the movie there is the great, amazing parts, happily ever after. They're just making love, or he just got a job, or good things that we consider as happy things that happen to us. And there are also the sad moments, right? When they break up, when he dies, and when we know it's a movie, we never really stop. Okay, stop. That's a bad moment. Move forward to when they kiss or when they make love. We actually sometimes even more excited about these moments when he's almost dead or something bad happened, because it's part of life. And and that's why happiness and trying to get happiness and trying to be happy doesn't work, because it's not life. Life is not like that. And as we can take us out from the movie and watch it, we can actually enjoy these bad moments as well, these sad moments as well. And this allows us to take it and watch it, but then actually going back even deeper to life. We can stay there and just watch, and that's maybe monks or people who just retreat, but we can also use it, our capacity to come back to that freedom and emptiness of the mind, to then go back even deeper into life and participate fully in life, and to love and to laugh and to cry. And that starts to create the mindset of play. Because if you look at animals or even young kids, when they don't have to survive and they don't have to rest, then what they do is to play. They just play around, right? They don't really, okay, now I need to make more money. The lion is like, okay, now I need to... No, they just play around. The dogs, they just play around. That's what they do. They perceive life as play. And that's something that has been forgotten in our civilization. Play for the sake of play, living for the sake of life, and celebrating life, and not seeing it as climbing something and getting something. And this mix, when we are fully free and we can move in the world and we can move around and we can just walk through life and our mind is clear. There is nothing, even myself, as I'm now talking and speaking, I don't know what will be the next words that will come out of my mouth. I didn't plan, and I don't think as I'm talking. I don't know. Let's see what comes. And that empty mind can actually then be a vessel for things to come through. But if I'm just empty, but I'm not alive, and I'm not in my body, and I'm not feeling my feet, and feeling my body, and feeling the life moving through, then I cannot really fully enjoy and celebrate and participate in life. And that state is a different state of consciousness. It's not just a different state of consciousness, but it's a different way of being and moving in life. It's the difference between and moving in life from a place of reacting and planning things. And that was the way I used to live for a long time. I was a strategic consultant. What I was doing for money, for work, was making plans for people. And for myself, I was always making plans. And I thought I was pretty good at it. And usually the plans actually worked pretty well. But I didn't fully enjoy life back then. And and the big inspiration that came to me was actually when I was not planning. And that brings us to the next point, basically, that as we can be and move in life more and more from that state of freedom and clarity and empty mind and aliveness in the body, then we can move through the unknown. And that's super important now in these days, because what's happening in life and in the global workforce and in different countries is that things are changing more and more rapidly. And you know McKinsey? Have you heard of the company? The consulting, the best consulting company in the world. They published a report about the most important skills for people in the next 20 or 30 years for the workplace. And what they said was that people will need to be creative, will need to be adaptive to changes, will need to be able to be flexible in different environments, will need to have critical thinking, and will be able to relate to different types of people. And all of these attributes or qualities are the byproduct of people who are moving through life when they're as free and fully alive beings. That's what happens. They become creative and they become flexible and adaptive. Because once we are trying to have light everywhere, and that's what we do when we plan and strategize. We want to have certainty. And we live in a world without certainty. We just saw it with the coronavirus, with COVID. There is no certainty. Things change, and things just going to change more and more and more. And being able to be a great planner is going to be much less important than being able to move in the dark. To not to know, but to be very, very attentive and very, very present and listen. And that is the opposite of reaction. Because once we can get ourselves into that state of freedom and aliveness, we can start listening instead of reacting. Because we cannot listen until we are empty. And we cannot listen if we are not alive. Because our different parts of our body that we can listen with are not working and are not vibrating. And listening can happen in different parts of our body. One part is with consciousness. It's when we meditate, for example, and things just come through. And we just bring our awareness here. We're not thinking, but our awareness is here, and things just start to come through. And we can either close our eyes or walk with open eyes, and things come. And we can listen with our heart, and just walk and bring our awareness to our hearts, and ask ourselves, where should I be now? Who should I talk to? What should I do? And see what comes. And also with our body, we can bring our awareness to our body and feel, where does our body want to take us? How does our body want to move? Right? Maybe if my body moves differently, different neurotransmitters would be released and different inspirations would come. Just as I'm talking here, and when I'm sitting, different things are released than when I'm walking. And I can plan that, and I can, this is released then, and after 10 minutes I would stand, but then I'm not creative because I'm thinking. But if I'm very, very present and attentive and just feeling and listening to where my body wants to take me and how my body wants to move, then the inspiration can come through the body as well. And I just want to give you a life example, kind of. Let's say that we are going to a club, okay? And we can be like, because we're all guys here, so I'll give an example with a girl. Let's say that we go to a club and we have this idea or craving or something that we want to maybe meet a girl and we want to maybe spend the night with or meet and have a relationship with or whatever. And we want to dance and we want to have fun and we want to be cool and we want that our friends will look at us and what a cool and confident and amazing guy he is. And so we have the plans. I should go there and I should do this and this is, and then we look around and what girls should I talk to? And she looks good and and what should I say to her? And that's the first sentence. And if she says that, then I will reply this. And we have a full plan, but we're not present, we're not listening, we're not free, and we're not so alive because of it. And then we go and if everything will work exactly according to our plan, which is almost 0% because life doesn't work like that, then great, but usually it doesn't work. And then things don't work as we planned and we become anxious. We go to her, we said a sentence and she says something else that we did not expect. We become anxious and we become less creative because what happens is that cortisol is released in our body and our mind becomes more and more running on beta waves, and that creates stress and it blocks the parts that are creative in our mind, and we become less creative. And becoming less creative makes us less successful with that girl. So it doesn't work out. It continues not to work out. So we become even more anxious, and that's that spiral. Again, that runs down and down and down.
Negative feedback.
Exactly. And what happens is that, and I'm sure that it happened to you as well, that it happened to me many times when I was in places and I was in the beginning, I was like, everything is gonna be fine and I'm gonna be cool, and I would take a shower and have my best clothes and would be very confident, and then things didn't go as I expected, and suddenly everyone would be hostile and ugly, and I would go and sit in a corner and judge people and say they're not good and they're not nice and I'm better than them and things like that. And that's that spiral that is going down. But being moving as free and alive, what it allows us is to be fearless, is to be able to go to anywhere we want, to a club, to whatever. We don't have to plan it. We don't care about what we wear. We don't care about who the girls that are going to be there or whatever. We just go around and we go into the club and we just listen where the body wants to take us, where the hearts want to take us. And then there is a girl that we just feel something. And if we're stuck in the mind, we cannot feel that. We're not attentive enough. But if we're not, then we can feel it. And there is a reason probably, because there is an energetic thing that moves through us. There is a charge that just wants to be to be shown and to be experienced. And then things start to work out. And we're so attentive and present. And she says something and we don't know what we will say, but something just comes through and it works. And we just have an idea, hey, you know what, maybe go, I just feel like having ice cream. She said, yeah, cool. And then we found ourselves on the beach having ice cream, and whatever happens next, happen next. But it's the things that we cannot anticipate in any way. We could not come up with a plan to have an ice cream. And this allows us to move that way, and it happens the same in the workplace. And this state is something that is not new. I didn't find it, and nobody found it. It was always there. And the ancient Greeks, they call this state ecstasis. In the Tao, they call it wu-wei. Kind of, it's a bit different, but wu-wei is more, and the emphasis is more on the freedom. Ecstasis is really fully freedom and aliveness. And it also connects to flow states. Have you heard of flow states? Flow states, the difference is that the emphasis there is for the self. Like, I want to be in flow to get more stuff done. But actually free and alive is when we transcend. So that's why people don't get into flow states. Because they try to study how to, and that's what prevents them from being, because you need to surrender in order to get into flow. Wanna have some water?
How many people have you met in your experience who are in that state of freedom that you're talking about?
I would say about maybe 15 or 20, personally.
How obvious is it?
What do you mean?
Like, can you tell straight away?
I can tell, yeah. It's something that you feel. I feel in the energy of someone. It's in their field. You feel it. I feel it. I can see when somebody's stuck in the thought, and when there is this peacefulness. So I can see when somebody can be free. It's like it's an experience of like there is no one inside. You look at them and you see their soul, but you don't see There is clarity. There is something that flows through. That's my experience when it comes to freedom. And aliveness, it feels their body is vibrating. You feel their body. You feel their energy around. When they enter a room, you feel it. That's my experience with that. And the question that you asked, do you need to go through the success one to get to the artist, right? So yes and no, because there are some artists who just started there. So it depends on our circumstances of life and the conditioning we received. If we were conditioned in a different way, we might start from the happiness, because our parents have never really told us be successful. They just told us be happy. We are successful already. Usually it happens sometimes when the parents, for example, have been through the success pyramid, and then they went after, so I will start from the next one. But not always. Sometimes it's the opposite. So It depends. Not necessarily, but many times it does go with that order, in my experience.
Right. But do you think you need the to have that element of like I don't know how to phrase this, but like being partially in that success paradigm in order to satisfy the survival paradigm? So like for example, having the freedom of survival, like paying your own, or having your own place or whatever, you have to be earning some kind of money, and and so you have to have that like an element of that success paradigm in order to.
But success is different because when let's say that in order to survive, which actually in New Zealand and in Western countries, you don't really need to earn any money. You can just get money from the government and you will survive, right? And and some people do it, I guess, which is fine. And if you want to live better or you want to have a better apartment or whatever, then you still don't need to be successful for that. You can be like, I just want to be a barista somewhere and that's enough for me and I don't want to climb the ladder, right? I just need that money for the rest of my life and that's okay for me, right?
Yeah.
So that's about that.
Carry on. I'll catch up.
Cool. And then so let's actually also talk about getting into that state of flow. So it starts really with freedom, but freedom, there are different ways to get it. And you want to see with yourself what are the easiest ways for you to get into that state of freedom. Some people, the best way for them is through meditation. I'm just meditating and I'm emptying myself and I'm free. Others, it's actually through the body. And that's why when Ryan told you that cortisol is running, when you were asking a question, one of the things that you can do when you feel it, let's say you're asking a question or you're somewhere and you're feeling a bit anxious and things start running, actually instead of, you can breathe, but you can also move the body. You can also stand, just as we did in the beginning, just start to move and start to shake. And shaking actually brings more and more of the awareness to the body from the mind, and then the mind gets empty. So that's a way to do it. Another is also through the heart. When we are experiencing deep emotions with someone, or in general with something, then we get free. Let's say that we're in love. You all had the experience of being in love, yeah?
I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet.
All right. But so in my experience, I was a few times in love in my life, and when I was in love, there was this freedom there. Like I was just, especially when I was with the loved one, I didn't care about anything. I didn't want to think about anything. I just wanted to be.
Yeah.
It's that experience. So it can also be through the heart. Usually body, heart, and consciousness and mind. These are the ways to get into freedom. And from freedom, as we bring more and more present, and we can be more present, we can get into flow and into that state of freedom and aliveness. And then we can listen. And instead of reacting or just doing something immediately, just walk and listen. And there is a beauty in that as well, experiencing life instead of listening. Just walking in the street, being free and alive, and listen to what comes. And then inspiration kicks in. And on the body level, on the mind, on the brain level, what happens when inspiration comes is the mind gets into alpha and even theta waves, and different neurotransmitters are released, mostly dopamine, adrenaline, oxytocin, serotonin, and anandamide. These are the
What's the last one?
Anandamide. It connects to there is anandamide in cacao actually.
Okay. Yeah.
When you get anandamide, makes you relaxed and open. And it's like a soup of different neurotransmitters, and then suddenly in that relaxed, but our body is active. There is energy in the body. We're not sleeping, we're not drowsing, but there is energy. But we are in that calm state. And then in brain scans, they saw that there is a spike, suddenly a spike of gamma waves. Gamma wave is the highest frequency waves. Boom! And this spike, researchers try to understand what does it come from. How can it be that suddenly, boom, gamma waves? And that actually is that point when few or two or more neurons in the brain that didn't have any connection before, they come together and they form a new thing. And this is that spike and that inspiration.
The Eureka Moment.
Yeah, ooh, fuck this.
Yeah.
And it usually happens in those moments, let's say that I'm doing sport, I'm running, and I'm free. I'm just running and my mind is free, but there is energy. And then I finish running and I'm just sitting on a bench there and just like this, looking at the sea, fully free, fully alive, and boom, I have an idea for something in the business, and I'm like, wow, where did it come from? Usually these ideas come in these moments, when we're in nature, when we are in these kinds of moments. And the ideas, the inspiration, can be different types of inspiration. There is an inspiration for a business idea or a product, or it can also be an inspiration for a piece of art, for
Making a mud hut.
what?
Making a mud house.
Mud house, exactly. Yeah, that's a great inspiration. I hope you'll get it one day in your life. And it can also be to talk to someone, to move somewhere. And it's very subtle inspiration that I'm at that state and I just feel like I want to move here. And I just want to talk to that person or to that girl in the club. I don't know why, but I just need to do that. So I do it. That's also a type of inspiration. And that's creating a life that is based on inspiration. Instead of based on reaction, and I'm reacting to that and I'm planning and doing, it's based on inspiration. I'm moving in inspiration. And the next moment after having that inspiration is the manifestation of it. And that's art. That's why it's the cycle of the artist, is the way that we create art. And art can be a hug that we give someone. A hug cannot be art at all. Hey man. But we can also be somewhere and we just feel like we want to give a hug to that person. And we give that hug and we are fully present. And this hug is a piece of art. And that person will remember that hug. I had these moments. I had a friend in Bali that I remember. His name is Dom. And there was one time that we just met in a bar and we hugged each other, and it was a piece of art, this hug. And we remember it and we laugh about it. And this stuff happened. And the process of casting inspiration in matter is that process that creates art. And basically what art is a way to store life in matter. And when I say matter, I don't mean necessarily mud, but form in general. It can be Mozart, hundreds of years ago, who had inspiration. He was in that state of flow. Inspiration came in and he casted it into matter, into a mold, into a piece of art, a musical piece. And since then, it was a way to transmit his inspiration and his current of life, his essence, to millions and hundreds of millions of people in centuries, right? And it happens with him, and it happens with Leonardo da Vinci or with artists. And you can see when it's a piece of art and when it's not. And there are people who pretend to be artists or who want to be artists. And you see their painting, but it doesn't make you feel anything. And you're like, it's not art. And it can be very aesthetic and very beautiful, but it's not art. And the reason that it's not art is that those people came from an agenda. They're like, oh, I want to make this painting because I want to be famous, or I need to be an artist, or people expect me to be a good artist, so I need to paint that. But an artist, it's just flowing through. I cannot resist. I have to do it. And then you see it in the piece. You see it in the musical piece. You see it in anything you do. And then anything that we do in life becomes a piece of art. And it's a way for us basically to ignite others and make others be free and alive. because when I listen to a piece of art, I become more free and I become more alive. It's a way to transmit that and scale it up to many, many people. And for that process, we have a few things that we need to have. One is the inspiration, but after the inspiration, we need a pipe. Because Van Gogh, when he wanted to paint something, he needed to have a canvas, right? And he needed to have the paint. He needed to have these things in order to actually be able to transmit it. And he needed to have his hand, right, and to know how to do it actually. So these are our pipes. So once we understand what is our essence, then we can continue and understand what pipe can bring that essence through. So, and that's a process of asking yourself, reflecting back in your life, and asking yourself where and when were the moments in your lives when you were fully free and alive. It can be when you were 5 and you were painting, or when you were cooking, or anything that you did, and just try to track it back and see when these moments were. And sometimes maybe you were painting then, but it doesn't mean that you're gonna be a painter. Maybe there was something in the painting that now could be expressed in a different way, but the essence is the same. So once you understand your essence and your unique quality, that when you get in touch with it, inspiration doesn't stop flowing.
It's like your own understanding your own art style or something.
Yeah, we all have that, because our personality, when we realize that it's not something that we have to work for, but it's something that we have to work through, that's when we become artists. We use our personalities to manifest stuff and to create art, instead of creating things and gathering stuff for the personality that results in emptiness because it's not real. And then we construct that pipe and we understand how to make it better so inspiration could flow more smoothly. And after we have that pipe, we want to have a mold, because a mold is something that we can cast that inspiration to, and in the end it becomes kind of a product. Like a painting, if Van Gogh just would go to some huge wall and just paint for 10 years on the wall, he does do it, but it's not something that can be transmitted maybe as the same way that he did with these paintings, and now he could put it in so many different galleries and museums. So we sometimes want to have, not necessarily, sometimes our art want to be able to be distributed. But if it is, then we might want to have a kind of a product that we can then share in the world and with more people. It can be a painting, it could be a piece of music, it can be a business product. And that product, as long as it comes from inspiration, it is a piece of art, no matter what it is. And as we have that product, we want to ignite others with it, right? Because think what a shame it would be if Mozart would write all this music and nobody would know about it, right? He will be ecstatic doing it, but there is such a huge opportunity to ignite others through that. And that's the time when we realize that maybe we need to wrap it somehow. That's a process of branding, and that changes the way we look at branding. Instead of, how can I use branding to make more money? How can I use branding to wrap my pieces of art so that others could be ignited? And then I would look at marketing. And marketing is not how can I get more clients and customers and leads and stuff to make more money, but actually how can I ignite more people, and I want to reach them with that product, with that piece of art that I have. So I would do that. And after reaching them, I would say, well, I want to scale it up even more. And maybe I can create a movement around it. So these people will be able to take that product, take that piece of art, and ignite more people with it. And that creates an expansion effect, a scaling effect, that makes it touching and reaching even more people. And at the end, what's important also for artists, and that's sometimes the reason that Mozart was died at the age of 30 and something, and also Van Gogh, is that they did not have a monetization process. And a monetization process makes our art sustainable. When we can monetize, we can make money as well. We can feed that cycle that starts with a state of full freedom and aliveness, being inspired, listening and being inspired, manifesting art in the world, and then monetizing it in a way that could allow us to continue and reach more and more people. So we want to make sure that we have this process as well. And as we do this, it's also a spiral, but this spiral is a spiral that's going up, because we are free and alive, and we're inspired, and we're creating art, and people share that art, and we're igniting more people, and we are being even more ignited into life as we do it more and more. And that current of life moves through us more and more, and that spiral moves up and ignites people, because when people even get in touch with us, with the art that we create, and even just with our presence, they get ignited, and they realize that they can do the same, and they can ignite others. And that's just a different way of being. And once that way is spread and more people learn, and it's a muscle of how to be free and alive. It's a muscle of how to listen. It's a muscle of how to cast inspiration in matter. All of these, it's skills, it's muscles that we can relearn. It's within us. It's been with us for thousands of years, but it's actually peeling the onion and actually this revealing that piece that's inside. And by doing this and supporting others to do this, we can just create a different culture where people live that way. When you walk in the street, and the street is just different. And I remembered a year ago, I was more than a year, I was consulting to the head of innovation in Bratislava, and she asked me like, look, like the infrastructure here is great, and healthcare is great, and education, there is good education and jobs, but people don't want to live here. Why people want to live in Berlin or in Prague and not here? And I spent a few days there and walking around the streets, and then I told her, look, there's one thing that's missing. And she was like, what? I was like, life. And that life, as we are living that way, we just infuse the streets with life. We infuse the countries with life. And life attracts life. Just the same as bugs and insects are attracted to light and to water, we're attracted to life. And we become more attractive, and people become more attractive, and the streets become more attractive, and life becomes more attractive. And we just begin to celebrate life instead of surviving life. We begin to be participants and players in life, perceiving life as an amazing play we can enjoy instead of game of survival that we need to we don't try to survive life and postpone death, but we celebrate life for every moment of it. And I just feel like finishing now.
Nice.
So.